Hey gun people, we're going to talk about Miranda warning and do cops have to read you your Miranda rights when they arrest you? Most people are going to say yes. They'd be wrong, but they would say yes. Miranda, to give you a little bit of case history, well, let me go start with Miranda first. The Miranda warning that you see in all the cop TVs where somebody gets arrested, you know, they holler out, you have the right to remain silent, you say can and will be used against your court law, you have a right to attorney, cannot forward or won't be appointed by the court. Okay? When they spit that out at every arrest, people think that cops have to give them that. I've arrested several people and they'll start complaining, hey man, why don't you read my rights? I got rights, I know why don't you read my rights? Well, the court says cops do have to give you your rights, but it's a two-pronged test on when you get it. The two-pronged test is custody and interrogation. Now, most people either forget one of those and think Miranda still applies. Custody and interrogation is, one, you have to be in custody. Two, the government has to be questioning you to elicit or get an incriminating response. So if I have you in custody and I go, what's your name? Miranda is not required. Giving me your name is not an incriminating statement on whether or not you killed this person. So that would not be a Miranda issue. So I can sit you in a car, never read your rights, tell you're under arrest, fill out my arrest report, never ask you any questions, and I didn't violate your constitutional right to Miranda because I didn't interrogate you. Interrogation is a cop or government asking you questions to get a criminal or response against your penal interests or against your best interests. So, and Miranda, the way Miranda happened is, I think his name was Ernesto Miranda, and it was Miranda versus Arizona, Phoenix case. Dude was arrested for rape and kidnapping, and the cops interrogated him for a couple hours. He confessed. They got him to sign a confession. Done deal, easy case, sent it to court. Should be a no-brainer. He was convicted. Got 20, 30 years. Well, his attorney said, this isn't fair. They questioned my client for 2 days. They didn't tell him he had a right to remain silent. They didn't remind him of his constitutional rights, so that's not unfair. That's unfair. The government is playing unfair. Now, as much as I kind of think Miranda's a pain in the butt and I don't really care for it, it's a good law. The government always has the upper hand. They always have the ability to exert more power, force, and control over anybody. Therefore, the founders wanted to make sure that this government power was construed or constructed in a way that held back or helped restrain the government from abusing that power. So, you know, as a cop, when Miranda, you know, we were learning Miranda, it was like, you know, all the cops were like, this is a bullshit case, this is BS, this guy should have went to jail, blah, 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 we got bad case law out of this. Well, you know what, I might have agreed when I was younger. As I understood more, I absolutely agree with Miranda, it's a good deal. Not everybody's going to understand that. I think everybody knows it now with TV, it's so prevalent. I don't think you have to tell anybody that, they pretty much know. But the court says you have to tell them, if I'm going to question you. Remember the two-pronged test for Miranda. Custody and interrogation. If either one of those is missing, no Miranda is required. So, do cops have to read your rights when they arrest you? No. Or, yes, if there's custody and there's interrogation. Everybody forgets those two parts. So, Ernesto he got 20, 30 years, and then his case was overturned. They said, hey, you know, he was questioned for 2 hours. That's wrong. He should have been told. It was overturned. He got a new trial. Well, this time the prosecutor convicted him, but they didn't convict him on his signed confession. They brought in an eyewitness, and he was convicted and went back to jail. And he got out, I think, in 78, 77, 76 time. So when he got out, he was a big hero. Because now all cops had to carry around a card with his name on it, Miranda, and that's how the law was enacted. So now he used to sign Miranda cards and kind of be a hero in his area because he was cool. I think he actually charged for his signature because he was Miranda and he was signing Miranda cards. Well, fate have it in their hands and karma came around. He got killed in a bar fight. So Miranda's dead, and I think this is like 2 or 3 years after he got out. So he's on parole, he gets killed in a bar fight, stabbed to death. Guess what happened to the guy that stabbed him? He invoked his Miranda rights, he didn't make a statement, and he got off and walked. You gotta love it when a plan comes together. So, but Rick, you just said Miranda's a good, now you're happy he's dead. Look, he was a crook, he was a criminal. Doesn't mean you can't get good case law out of it. Doesn't mean that what the government was doing or tried to do or can't do now isn't a good deal. So, Miranda, if I have to question you, now, as a citizen, if I make a citizen's arrest, or me as a retired cop to where I'm not the government now, I'm not a government agent, if I make a citizen's arrest and arrest you or I grab you, those laws that apply to cops do not apply to citizens. So you as a citizen can catch somebody robbing your house. You can scream at him and interrogate him all you want. You can get all the confessions you want out of him, and you're not in violation of Miranda, and the statement's not going to be suppressed because of a Miranda issue, because you are not government. Now, when you get into the agent of government and government agents, now it gets a little bit blood. And you know, all case law and everything is, again, that's why I kind of think understanding case law and understanding how the courts rule will help you understand how to base your decisions, what you say to the cops. You know, I'm a biggie, don't talk to the cops, don't give statements. Well, what you say and when you give a statement will help if you understand how it's going to be interpreted. How are the courts going to interpret this and how it's going to be used? So I get a guy breaking into my house, I go, you piece of shit. I tie him up with a belt, a cord, an extension cord, whatever I got. I call the cops, cop take an hour to get here. In the meantime, I'm like, you piece of shit, ought to beat the hell out of you, blah, 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 blah. Why'd you break in here? And he says, hey man, I've been watching your house for a week. Your neighbor has been helping me out, and he gave me this, and there was a couple other guys that drove me here, and they left, so now they're co-conspirators. All that can be used. No problem. So, somebody's shooting at something out here. I made some notes because I didn't want to forget a couple things. And I can't even really, there was a few things that I wanted to make sure I covered. Right? Oh yeah. Miranda is the two things that, there's a two-pronged test when Miranda's due, but what did the court say Miranda you had to advise them? You have to advise them of two main things. One, they have a right to remain silent. Two, they have a right to counsel. So those are the two things that Miranda requires a person to know when a cop's going to question them. Now, of course, cops being cops, they always say there's a fine line between cops and crooks. Okay, in order to be a good cop, you got to be pretty much almost a crook. So, because you have to be able to use the law, work within the law, think ahead, kind of coordinate, and you know, the courts have already ruled cops can lie to people. We can lie, I can lie to you, I can tell you I have your fingerprints. I mean, I had one guy confess because I went in, I made a palm print on my hand. I came back, I showed it to him, and I go, dude, these are your prints that were found at the scene. The guy's like, okay, I was there. And it was my print. And of course, it was accepted. Why? Because cops can lie to you. We can lie to you to get a thing. We can't coerce, beat, threaten, but we can lie. It's legal for cops to lie. It's legal for government to lie. I know you don't like it. I don't like it, but that's the way it is. So, what cops were doing with Miranda is a way to get around it. They were like, and you learn this over time, if you tell somebody their rights and then start questioning them, most of the time they're going to take it as a clue, connect the dots and go, he just told me I had the right to remain silent and ask for, and have a lawyer, and now he's asking me questions if I want to talk to him. Well, they'll connect the dots and say, you know what, maybe I ought to talk to an attorney, or maybe I don't want to say anything. So what cops do is we want to put as much time between that warning as we can. We're still complying with the law. So when I arrest you, it's the heat of the battle, I'm fighting you, I'm throwing handcuffs on you, we're bloody, I'm about to load you in a car, take you to the hospital for medical clearance, I'm pissed off. When I'm shoving you in a car, I'm reading your rights. You're under arrest, you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you, you have a right to attorney, if you can't afford one, will be appointed by court, you understand this, and I throw you in a car. Now there's time. I'm not questioning him. I'm taking him for medical, I'm asking his name, I'm asking him things that I'm not worried about getting an incriminating response, I'm just asking things so he gets used to talking to me, he feels comfortable. Now, when I set him down and go, dude, I know you raped a girl, we found your underwear there, you know, they just pulled DNA from her, we know it's going to match yours, did you do it? So that's how cops were kind of getting around it. Is that illegal? No. Is it playing the system? Is it working within the system? Sure. The other thing that cops were doing is they would ask you for a statement before they read your Miranda, get you to confess, get you to say, yeah, give me specifics, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then they go, you know what, I gotta read your Miranda rights. You have a right to remain silent, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you already told me you did it, and you know, we know you did it, and we're gonna find all the evidence and everything. Why don't you sign this confession here after you read your rights, saying that I read your rights, and now you're confessing. So then the guy would sign it, saying, shit, I'm already screwed, I already told them. Now they read my rights, I might as well tell them anyway. Good courts who were catching that, and good DAs who were telling that, those statements would probably get suppressed or thrown out. If the officer said, my intent was to get a statement, I didn't want to Mirandize him. Now, if the cop just said, hey, he never invoked his rights, I wasn't really asking him for an incriminating statement, we were just talking, and I was like, man, you know you did it, you know, we'll talk about it more later at the PD, but you know you did it, I know you did it. And he says, yeah, I did it. Now, that's different than me conspiring and planning to get a confession out of him and then read him his rights later. So that would fall more under the spontaneous statement. And that was an exception to Miranda, is when a suspect makes a spontaneous or unsolicited statement, that's admissible. So as a cop, if I arrest you, I'm arresting you, I don't have a chance to read your rights, you're running out of a house, there's somebody dead in there, I just took the bloody knife from your hand, I'm hooking you up, I'm picking you up, and you go, man, she made me do it. I knew she was sleeping with that guy, I had to kill her. I didn't Mirandize you, but I didn't ask you any questions. You made a spontaneous statement, therefore you can't claim Miranda was violated because I didn't advise you your rights. So that's one of the exceptions, spontaneous statements. Another statement that can be admissible through hearsay is dying declarations. If I'm dying and I'm laying there dead and I say Joe Bob did it, we can use that and that can be in court. Whereas otherwise that could not be used in court because it was an out-of-court statement made for the truth of the matter, and I couldn't use it because it would fall into hearsay, and hearsay is excluded. Because the reason why they exclude hearsay is that the other side doesn't get to question. Okay, if you say Joe Bob said this, and the defense can't question Joe Bob to see his validity, you know, question his integrity, where was he there, try to verify other than just the government side, then the courts go, hey, that's kind of one-sided. And it should be one-sided. But hearsay is kind of a BS in a lot of other areas. But we won't get into that. We'll stay with Miranda right now. So another thing that DAs were telling us to do, and we did it all the time, is once a guy invokes, I read your rights, yeah, right to remain, okay, I want a lawyer. Okay, by the law, we can't question anymore. We got to stop. That's what it says. But if we don't stop, there's nothing that can happen. Now people are going, oh, you violated his constitutional right. You can get sued. You can lose your house. It ain't going to happen. I mean, it just doesn't happen. There ain't been a cop out there that's been charged with violating Miranda rights by questioning somebody after they invoke their rights. What happens is the courts goes, hey, you violated Miranda, you question them after that, we're not going to let you use that statement. And we're going to invoke fruits of the poisonous tree, so anything that statement led you to is no good and inadmissible too. So that means they're going to squash that. Well, there's another exception to Miranda, that you can use statements given by the defendant to impeach his testimony. So if you're on jury duty or you wonder why guilty people don't take the stand, it's because they don't want to get impeached. They've either done something, they've admitted to something, they gave a statement and lied, and if they take the stand, now the prosecutor can go after them and question that. So that's why when you're on a jury and the guy goes, I ain't taking a stand, and then the court tells you, you must not take him not taking a stand as admission of guilt, that's his right under blah, 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 and he does not have to take the stand or self-incriminate. So people on a jury that don't know any better go, oh, you know, that's his right. People like cops that know better, look, dude, you want to get on that stand and say, I didn't do it and tell your side of the story. And if you don't, you got something to hide. And that means you've either given a statement admitting something and you know if you get up there they're going to bring it in. So the attorney goes, look, dude, I can't let you get on stand, because if you do, you told the cops. Even though the cops violated Miranda, even though you said you wanted a lawyer and you didn't want to talk to him, they continued to question you in violation of Miranda. You admitted to something. The court's not going to let your admission in, but if you get on that stand, they're going to be able to get that in the back door to impeach you if you lie. So they don't take the stand. So Miranda is, the big thing about Miranda is custody and interrogation. It's for the government, not citizens. And it's to make sure that you know you have the right to counsel and the right to remain silent. I think I covered all the points, but just to be sure, I want to go over this. Two-prong. Well, custody. I didn't really go over custody and interrogation. Interrogation is defined by the court as questions to elicit a criminal response. Hey, did you do it? That would be an interrogation. When I start asking you questions about the crime. Now, there's another issue that cops figured out we can get out of is once you're Mirandized or charged with one crime, I can question you about another crime. I forgot the legalities of it and how we played it, but it was somehow you advised them of their rights and they invoked their rights for this charge, but that doesn't mean for a new charge or a separate charge that's not connected that you can't talk to them. So you would go in the back door and try to question that way, and that's legal. But interrogation is asking questions that will get you to say I'm guilty or not, and custody is one of those fluid things that keeps getting changed. Someone else on my other video on the legal thing, I said pointing a gun at somebody is not a seizure. And when you get into what a seizure, if I shoot you, that's absolutely, the court say that's a seizure. Once I put a bullet in you, I've seized your body. But pointing a gun at you, I have not seized your body. So there's seizure, there's custody, there's a few other things that come into play when you get into that. But for Miranda's purposes, custody is, according to the courts, in the mind of the suspect or the arrestee, not what the cops, prosecutors, or other people think. So in my mind, if I feel I'm in custody, and custody is defined as freedom, your freedom to leave has been stopped, impeded, or prevented. You no longer feel you have the freedom to leave, or it's a formal taking into custody of arrest. Okay, so that's an arrest. So if 3 cops come and stand around me, am I in custody? Well, people are going to argue. Well, you could have left, could have said excuse me and walked between them, and you didn't leave, so it wasn't custody, even though you had a right. Now the courts have ruled if I go to the police department to talk to, they go, hey man, we want to talk to you. Why don't you come in and talk to us so we don't have to come arrest you? Okay. So I come into the PD. Now they can question me. That's not custody. They don't have to Mirandize me. And cops are very good at this. When we're interviewing people, to ensure that that's not confused for custody, we tell people, hey, you know you're here of your own free will and you can leave at any time, right? Yeah, okay, no problem. So that's not a Miranda warning. That's just something I want to get on the record if I'm recording, saying, hey, the guy knew he could leave because I told him he could leave. So cops will say that very often. You're free to leave. Even though a lot of times suspect doesn't feel he's free to leave. Just like a lot of confessions or coerced because you got 4 cops standing around you, you're going to prison for life, you better tell us the truth, blah, blah, this person, and you put all, and people confess all the time falsely. So Miranda was kind of one of those balancing things. Say, hey man, we want the cops to stop if a guy says he wants an attorney or doesn't want to answer questions. Leave him alone, don't push him to something until he has a right to counsel. So that's the difference between custody and interrogation, or the definition of it. But remember, it's in the suspect's mind, not yours. If I say, hey, I felt like I didn't have the right to leave, that's custody. Now, the prosecution and the government can challenge that and make me articulate why I felt I didn't have the right to leave. If I said, hey, cop walked up to me and asked me what time it was, I felt intimidated, scared, my knees started shaking, I peed my pants a little bit, and I felt like I couldn't leave. They're going to say that's not reasonable. Cop was just asking you what time it was. Now, if there's 5 cops around me, and they're surrounding me, and I have no path to leave, and they're blocking all exits, and they tell me if I don't talk to them, I'm going to jail, most people are going to say that's pretty reasonable that you didn't have the right. But there's a whole bunch in between there that gets cloudy on whether or not you have custody. And if you don't have custody, you don't need Miranda. If you have custody, you need interrogation in order for Miranda to apply. So, let's see here. Having rights. Oh yeah. Later on there was a call, I think it was out of Colorado, that cops, see, we used to just have to tell your rights. So cops would spit it out, blah, 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 and move on. Later, I don't remember if it was in the 80s or 90s, they came out to where now you have to get some sort of intelligent response from the person that he understands his rights. So now when we read your rights, we're like, I just read your rights. Do you understand these rights? Yes. Having these rights in mind, do you want to talk to me? Yes or no? So now they've even pushed it further to where government gives you even more opportunities to say, I don't want to talk. They got to read your rights, then they got to ask you if you understand them. Then if you understand them, they got to ask you, do you want, having these rights in mind and understanding the rights, do you want to talk to us? Now, once you say yes to that, there's still people arguing. Well, my client didn't make a good, you know, he was under the influence, he didn't know what he was doing, the cops told him he didn't think he had a choice, so there's going to be all these issues. But that's the way the court's going to evaluate it. And then, let's see here, statements without Miranda were impeached, I cover that. Spontaneous statements, civilians don't need to do it, dying black. Oh yeah, public safety exception. Miranda is not authorized if an officer can state a public safety exception. A public safety exception, and I'm going to use this on one of my crazy cop stories, is if I can say that the public's in danger and I need this information now, even though it's incriminating, I don't have to Mirandize you. So here's another loophole for the cops to use. So now, I arrest you, I've got you sitting on the curb, handcuffed, you're sitting there, I know you just robbed the 211 and you had a gun, we chased you, now you don't have a gun, guess what? It's reasonable that the gun, you tossed it somewhere between me chasing you and you leaving that store and us getting here. So there is a gun out here in the public that a child could find and possibly use. Therefore, to find that gun, I don't have to Mirandize you. I can ask you anything I want without Miranda. Where's the gun? What did you do it? You better show us. If a kid kills himself, you're going to jail for murder. I can do anything I want other than beat him. But to find that gun under the public safety exception. Now, again, if I don't read him his rights and he gives me a confession, it's on the burden of proof is on me to justify and articulate why I felt there was a public safety exception. If he robbed a bank with a pin poking through his jacket and I arrest him and he says it was a pin and I didn't do it or whatever and I know it's a pin, I can't claim I was afraid that some kid might find a pin and stab his schoolmate in the eye. That's not going to be reasonable. So the courts are always weighing back and forth, and again, everything in law enforcement and courts is all totality of the circumstances. Taking everything in mind that the officer known or should have known, what decisions he's made based on the information he knew at the time, and was it reasonable? And how they determine reasonable a lot of time with cops is they get a cop with the same experience and training and they ask him, what would you do in this situation? And most of the time they're going to say, yeah, I'd probably do that. Okay. And if they get a couple cops to testify that they would do that, then it becomes reasonable for cops with their level of training experience to do the same thing. Therefore, what he did was reasonable and we're not going to exclude her to kick it out. So hopefully that gives you a little better idea on Miranda. I'm always hearing, you know, guys used to tell us all the time, you got to read your rights. Guy goes, shut up, I don't have to read you shit. I didn't want to hear them, I didn't want to question them, I didn't want to deal with them. I'd rather wait till we get down so I wouldn't read their rights. And they would bitch and whine the whole damn trip about they're reporting me and I'm going to go to jail and they're going to sue me because I didn't read their rights and they know their rights and they know I got to read. Shut the hell up. If I ain't questioning you, I don't have to read your rights. All right? Hope that helps.